They say honesty is a virtue. My mother used to tell me that no matter how hard life gets, truth keeps your soul clean. But in the corporate world, truth gets you fired. My name is Claire Donovan, and for 3 years I was the executive assistant to Thomas Avery, the CEO of Avery Dynamics, a multi-million-dollar tech company in downtown Chicago. On paper it looked like a dream job. A modern office with glass walls, fresh espresso every morning, and a paycheck that promised stability. But behind those glass walls there were cracks, and I was about to fall through one. The first red flag came on a Thursday. I was organizing quarterly reports when I noticed 2 sets of numbers that didn't match: the sales reports from our Midwest region and the statements filed with the board. They were off by about $300,000. First I thought it was a typo. Everyone makes mistakes. But as I looked closer, the discrepancy wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone was shifting funds from regional profits into executive bonus adjustments. Someone, meaning Thomas Avery himself. I stared at those numbers for a long time. My pulse pounded in my ears. I could almost hear my mother's voice whispering, "Do what's right, Claire." I wish I'd ignored her that day. The next morning I walked into Thomas's office with trembling hands and a heart full of courage. He looked up from his desk, all charm and arrogance. "Morning, Claire. What's up?" Took a breath. "Sir, I noticed something unusual in the Midwest reports. It looks like money is being redirected to executive accounts." He leaned back, smiled, a slow, calculated smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Claire," he said softly, "do you have any idea how this company operates?" I frowned. I thought you should know. "It could be." He cut me off with a wave. "It's handled. You don't need to worry about internal finances. Just focus on scheduling, okay?" That tone, calm but cold, made my stomach twist. But I couldn't let it go. Not when people were working 60-hour weeks while someone pocketed their bonuses. So I made a copy of the files. Quietly. Secretly. I thought I was doing the right thing. 3 days later, I was escorted out of the building by security. No explanation. No warning. Just an envelope and a silence that cut deeper than any insult. Inside the envelope was my termination letter, for breach of confidentiality. They found out I had reported the fraud. But not to them. To the internal ethics department. Someone had leaked it. And that someone was Thomas Avery himself. That night, I sat in my small apartment surrounded by moving boxes and unpaid bills. I stared at my laptop screen, rereading the message I'd sent to the ethics board. Every word was professional, honest, and brave. The kind of thing you'd expect a good employee to do. Except it cost me everything. No one in the industry would hire me after that. Thomas made sure of it. Rumors spread that I was unstable, untrustworthy, a liability. My phone went silent. My inbox dried up. Friends stopped calling. And somewhere in the high-rise corner office I once worked in, Thomas was probably laughing, collecting another bonus adjustment while I figured out how to pay rent. Months passed. I picked up freelance admin work, remote gigs, low pay, no respect. I kept my head down, told myself it was temporary. But inside a storm was brewing. Every night I replayed that moment. His smirk, his words, the humiliation. And each time something in me hardened. I wasn't just angry. I was determined. If honesty got me fired, then power would get me even. I started reading. Business ethics, corporate law, startup finance. Every free minute I had I studied. By day I was a quiet freelancer. By night I was building something bigger, something mine. Started small. A spreadsheet, a few ideas, a dream. But then I found a mentor. Julian Reyes, a retired CFO who had once crossed paths with Thomas Avery. Julian hated corruption as much as I did. "You've got brains and guts, Claire," he told me. "Use them. Don't beg for a seat at their table. Build your own." That sentence lit a fire in me. And that was how Verity Systems was born. Verity started as a consultancy for small businesses that wanted financial transparency and fair pay structures. It was ironic. I had been punished for being too honest, and now honesty was my brand. Within a year, we had clients across 3 states. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was growing. But success didn't erase the past. Every headline about Avery Dynamics reminded me of what he stole from me. Every award Thomas received was a blade in my side. Until one night I saw something that changed everything. A headline. Avery Dynamics faces financial audit amid corruption allegations. I clicked it so fast I nearly dropped my coffee. The article mentioned discrepancies, large sums of unaccounted revenue, offshore transactions, investor complaints. The empire Thomas built was cracking. And I smiled for the first time in a long time. 2 weeks later I got a call. Unknown number. Miss Donovan. Yes. This is Mark Holloway from Sendrix Capital. We've heard about your firm. We'd like to discuss a potential partnership involving a distressed acquisition. My pulse raced. I didn't dare hope. Which company? Yes. Was. Then. Avery Dynamics. I sat there frozen. The company that destroyed me was about to be handed to me on a silver platter. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind flashed between memory and possibility, between humiliation and revenge. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. If I was going to take it, I'd do it clean the way I was taught. Honest, transparent, fair. And when it was done, Thomas Avery would learn the one lesson he'd spent his whole life avoiding, that the truth always wins. Unemployment isn't just about losing a paycheck. It's about losing your sense of purpose. For weeks after being fired, I barely left my apartment. The city outside my window kept moving. Cars, people, lights, but I felt like I'd fallen off the map. Thomas Avery went on with his life, smiling in glossy business magazines, celebrated as a visionary leader. Meanwhile, I was rationing instant noodles and applying to jobs that never called back. And every time I looked in the mirror, all I saw was failure. Until one night, something changed. I was scrolling through social media when I saw it. An article about Avery Dynamics. The headline read, "New allegations of fraud surface at Avery Dynamics. CEO denies wrongdoing." Froze. The same kind of fraud I'd reported 2 years ago. The same corruption I'd been punished for exposing. And that's when something inside me clicked. They stole my career, my reputation, my peace. But they didn't steal my talent. That night, I dusted off my mother's old leather notebook, the one she gave me before she passed away. Inside were blank pages and a single message written in neat cursive. If they don't open the door, build your own. I decided to do exactly that. I took what I knew best, organization, leadership, and truth, and turned it into a vision. That vision became Lumitech, a startup focused on transparent workplace software, tools that help companies track integrity, ethics, and accountability in real time. Irony, right? The woman fired for honesty, creating a company built on it. First, it was just me and an old laptop. I worked out of cafes, fueled by cheap coffee and a stubborn refusal to quit. Then came Eli Navarro, a data engineer I met at a tech meetup. He'd also worked for corrupt corporations and hated how integrity was treated like a weakness. When I told him my story, he didn't laugh or pity me. He said, "Let's make something that scares the people who think they can't be caught." That was the moment Lumitech truly began. We worked out of a tiny co-working space, renting it by the hour. No fancy office. No backing investors. Just vision and fire. Our first product, Glassline, was a system that automatically flagged financial inconsistencies within company reports, preventing internal fraud. It was clean, efficient, honest, and revolutionary. Within months we had our first client, a small retail chain tired of accounting errors. Then another client. Then 5. And soon investors started to notice. 2 years later, Lumitech wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. We had a downtown office, full team, recognition in Forbes, and partnerships with companies across the country. Every success felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But success has a way of drawing shadows. One morning I got an email from a corporate acquisitions firm, Avery Holdings. Oh, it couldn't be. I clicked the message, my heart racing. They wanted to discuss a potential partnership and a strategic buyout. And the signature at the bottom, Thomas Avery. I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh that barely felt human. After all these years, after destroying my life, now he wanted to buy my company. Oh, this wasn't going to be a partnership. This was going to be war. That evening, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the Chicago skyline. My reflection stared back at me, stronger now, sharper. 2 years ago I was his assistant. Now I was his equal. And if fate wanted to bring Thomas Avery back into my story, then I was ready to rewrite the ending. The next morning I replied to his email. Mr. Avery, I'd be interested in discussing your offer. Claire Donovan, CEO, Lumitech. That reply wasn't acceptance. It was invitation. Because I didn't just want justice anymore. I wanted revenge. And I was going to get it, elegantly, strategically, legally. After all, if truth got me fired, maybe it was time for truth to get me crowned. Strange how success sneaks up on you. One day you're counting pennies at a diner, and the next people are calling you a visionary. But for me, success wasn't a moment, it was a climb. Lumitech had gone from a whisper to a conversation in the tech industry. I still remember the day I walked into our new office, a clean, glass-walled floor in a refurbished building in downtown Seattle. The kind of office I used to clean late at night when I worked part-time as a janitor. Now it was mine. Our team had grown from 2 people to 40. Developers, designers, data analysts, all believers in the same mission. Business without corruption. And I had grown too. Gone was the timid assistant who once hesitated to speak up. I had become sharper, more grounded, less afraid of being too honest. Because honesty had built me. Still, I wasn't naive. Success in business isn't just about innovation. It's about survival. Competitors were circling. Some tried to copy our tech. Others whispered rumors that Lumitech's rise was too fast to be clean. I ignored them. I'd heard worse. But one afternoon, while reviewing our client list, something made my heart stop. Avery Dynamics. Yes, that Avery Dynamics. Thomas Avery's empire. They had been referred by one of our investors who didn't even know my connection to them. Their financial department was in chaos, with lawsuits piling up and employee turnover at an all-time high. They wanted to implement our software to rebuild trust. I couldn't help but laugh. They wanted me, the woman they'd fired for telling the truth, to help them rebuild their image of integrity. Felt poetic. Felt dangerous. And I said yes. The first time I walked into the Avery Dynamics building after 2 years, my chest tightened. The same marble floors. The same sterile scent of polished steel and lavender air freshener. The same elevator that had carried me to my humiliation. But this time I wasn't an employee. I was a CEO. People noticed. The receptionist's jaw practically dropped when she read my visitor badge. "You're with Lumitech." Smiled. "I am Lumitech." Her silence was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. Thomas Avery met me in the same office where he'd fired me. He looked older now. The confident sparkle in his eyes had dulled. His suit was still perfect, but his energy was not. "Miss Morgan," he said with a forced grin, standing to shake my hand. "Pleasure to see you again." "Likewise, Mr. Avery," I replied, voice calm, measured. "It's good to see the company still standing." He laughed awkwardly. "Barely. We've had some issues. But I hear your firm is the best in the field." I tilted my head. "We like to think so. We specialize in transparency." His smile faltered. "But The weeks that followed were both surreal and cathartic. My team installed Lumateca's systems, and within a month, we uncovered massive internal fraud and data manipulation. Again. This time the paper trail didn't disappear. This time I wasn't silenced. I had leverage, proof, and power. But revenge, I learned, doesn't always come from destruction. Sometimes it comes from control. By the end of the quarter, Avery Dynamics was spiraling. Their investors were restless, their leadership shaken. Lumateca's reports had forced several resignations, and public trust was at its lowest. And then, opportunity struck. A financial group approached me, suggesting a merger. Avery Dynamics was desperate. Lumatech, on the other hand, was soaring. The proposal was simple: we acquire them. That night, I sat alone in my office, staring at the contract. 2 years ago, Thomas Avery had taken everything from me. Now I had the chance to own everything he had built. I didn't hesitate. Sign. The announcement hit the industry like a thunderclap. Lumatech acquires Avery Dynamics in landmark corporate takeover. Social media exploded. Reporters flooded my inbox. But I ignored them all. I only cared about one meeting, the one where I would walk into my old office, as the new CEO. The day came. The boardroom was packed. Every executive was seated. Cameras from business media networks lined the walls. And then I entered, wearing the same navy blue suit I'd worn on the day I was fired. Deliberate choice. I took my place at the head of the table. "Good morning," I said. My voice didn't shake. As of today, Avery Dynamics is officially under Lumateca's leadership. We'll be restructuring every department for transparency, sustainability, and integrity. Murmurs filled the room. Continued. "I know some of you remember me. Some of you might think I don't belong here." Pause. But the truth is, honesty doesn't need permission. The silence that followed was electric. And then the door opened. Thomas Avery walked in. His face pale, his expression unreadable. "Miss Morgan," he began softly. "Or should I say, Theo Morgan." I looked at him for a long moment. "I told you the truth once," I said quietly. "You punished me for it. Now I get to rebuild what your lies destroyed." He swallowed hard, nodding slightly. "You won." "No," I replied. "I just stopped losing." That night, after the press conference, I stood by the office window overlooking the city lights. Revenge wasn't as sweet as I'd imagined. It wasn't about watching someone fall. It was about watching myself rise again. I finally understood what my mother meant when she said, "If they don't open the door, build your own." Because when you build your own door, you decide who walks through it. When I agreed to work with Avery Dynamics, I told myself it was just business. Nothing more. But deep down I knew it wasn't true. This was personal. Every morning I walked through those glass doors, I felt the ghosts of my past brushing against me. The whispers, the humiliation, the sting of being called too honest. But I didn't let the ghosts win. This time I came armed with knowledge, confidence, and power. I was no longer an assistant trying to be heard. I was a CEO who had built her own empire from ashes. The project started smoothly. My team from Lumatech was professional, efficient, and discreet. We worked alongside the remaining Avery Dynamics staff, installing the Glassline integrity system, analyzing data, and restructuring reporting pipelines. But as we dug deeper into their records, what we found was worse than I had imagined. The corruption hadn't stopped, it had evolved. Offshore accounts, false reports, ghost employees, all buried under consulting fees and marketing expenses. The same deceit that had once cost me everything was now threatening to sink the company entirely. And Thomas Avery. He was still at the top, still smiling in his tailored suits while the empire rotted beneath him. I remember one night, staying late to review encrypted financial data. The office was empty, the lights dim, and the city glowed beneath the windows like a sea of fire. Eli came in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You're still here?" he asked softly. "I can't stop now," I said, eyes fixed on the screen. "I need to see how deep this goes." He sat beside me. "You're not doing this for them, are you?" Pause. "No," I whispered. "I'm doing it for me." That was the truth. I wasn't here to fix Avery Dynamics. I was here to expose it, to make sure the truth that got me fired was finally seen in daylight. Over the next few weeks, my team uncovered enough evidence to make national headlines. But instead of going public right away, I did something unexpected. I stayed quiet, because I realized there was a better way to destroy Avery. Legally, strategically, permanently. Their stock had been plummeting for months. Investors were nervous. Employees were jumping ship. And in the middle of all this chaos, Lumitech was booming. Our latest software version had gone viral, praised by corporate watchdogs and government regulators alike. Our credibility was ironclad. So I began to move. Quietly. I started buying Avery Dynamics shares. Not directly, of course. I wasn't reckless. Through subsidiaries, silent partners, and shell holdings, I acquired stake after stake, piece by piece. By the time Thomas Avery realized what was happening, I owned controlling interest. It happened on a Thursday morning. Thomas had called an emergency board meeting. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "Someone," he barked, "has been buying up our stock. We need to identify the buyer before they gain too much leverage." I waited until the boardroom doors closed, then stood. "There's no need to look far," I said. He froze. "What do you mean?" I slid a folder across the table. Inside were the legal documents, signed, sealed, and undeniable. "I mean," I said calmly, "you're looking at your new majority shareholder." The room fell silent. Thomas's face turned pale. You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," smiled. "You once told me I'd never survive without this company. I took that personally." His jaw clenched. "You set this up. You planned this." I nodded slowly. "No, Thomas. You planned it. Every lie, every fraud, every decision you made led you right here, to me." The board voted that afternoon. Thomas Avery was removed as CEO. And by evening, the press release went public. Lumitech acquires Avery Dynamics in strategic takeover. Within hours, headlines exploded across the internet. Former employee becomes CEO of company that fired her. Honesty wins. The ultimate corporate revenge. And for the first time, the truth wasn't just heard. It was celebrated. That night, I stood alone in what used to be Thomas's office. It felt surreal. The same place where my world had once collapsed was now mine. The skyline twinkled outside, and for the first time in years I felt peace. I ran my hand across the mahogany desk and whispered to myself, "We're not defined by the people who try to break us. We're defined by how we rebuild." But even then, a small voice inside me asked, was this victory or vengeance? I wasn't sure yet. Thomas Avery paced the boardroom like a man walking toward his own grave. "Who's behind this?" he barked. "Who's been buying our stock?" The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Every face looked guilty but none spoke. I waited, calm, collected, until his eyes finally met mine. He froze. "Good morning, Mr. Avery," I said softly. "You might want to sit down." He blinked. "You?" "Yes," I said, sliding a folder across the glass table. "These are the documents confirming my controlling shares in Avery Dynamics. As of this morning, I own 51% of the company." His jaw tightened. "That's impossible." "Nothing is impossible," I replied. "Not for someone who learns from the best." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. The power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. 2 years ago, this man had stripped me of everything I was. Now I was taking back everything he had. "This isn't revenge," I said, standing. "This is consequence." He clenched his fists, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. You think you can just walk in here and cut him off? I don't think, Thomas. No. You built your empire on lies, and I built mine on truth. Guess which one lasted longer? He stared at me, his confidence crumbling in slow motion. I looked around the room. Some of the same executives who had ignored me back then were now whispering to each other, uncertain whether to fear me or follow me. I won't fire anyone, I said. Not yet. But things will change. Effective immediately, Avery Dynamics will merge under the Lumitech umbrella. Transparency audits start today. Every record, every transaction, every secret comes into the light. I paused, then looked directly at Thomas. Including yours. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Just silence and regret. When the meeting ended, I walked out of the building for the last time. Outside, the city was bright, alive, breathing. The same streets that had once felt suffocating now felt like freedom. Eli was waiting by the car. He grinned when he saw my face. So, he said, how did it go? Smiled. Let's just say. The truth finally got promoted. In the weeks that followed, the story spread everywhere. Headlines read, Whistleblower returns as CEO of former employer. Honesty wins. Lumitech acquires Avery Dynamics. And people started calling me the honest CEO. It was strange, being admired for the very thing that once got me destroyed. But more than admiration, I felt peace. For the first time, I wasn't running from my past. I was rewriting it. A few months later, I returned to my mother's grave. The air smelled like spring. Soft, new, forgiving. I placed a white lily on the grass and whispered, You were right, Mom. If they don't open the door, build your own. Smiled. And make sure it's bigger. They say success is the best revenge. But they're wrong. The best revenge is peace. The kind that comes from knowing you didn't need to destroy anyone to win. You just needed to become everything they said you couldn't. And I did. I became the CEO of my own destiny. I placed a single white lily on my mother's grave. Her favorite flower. For a long moment I just stood there, watching the sunlight filter through the trees, warming the marble stone. I could almost hear her voice again, calm and patient, whispering the words that guided me my whole life. If they don't open the door, build your own. Smiled. I did, Mom. And it's bigger than theirs ever was. A breeze passed, gentle but sure, almost like approval. Later that night, as I sat in my office overlooking the city lights, I opened my laptop and drafted a company-wide message. To every employee who ever felt silenced for speaking the truth, this company is for you. Integrity is not a liability. It's our foundation. When I hit send, it wasn't just a memo. It was a declaration. A signal that the era of silence was over. Within months, Lumitech's reputation soared. We were hailed as the new model for ethical business in America. Major networks ran specials about how we'd changed the corporate culture landscape. And yes, Avery Dynamics, now under my leadership, was finally reborn. Clean, transparent, profitable. But I didn't keep the Avery name. That belonged to my past. I renamed it Avery Luma Innovations, a symbol of transformation, not destruction. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted legacy. One evening a letter arrived. No sender name. No logo. Just my name written in neat handwriting. Inside a short note. You were right. I'm sorry. It was signed Thomas Avery. No bitterness. No excuses. Just truth at last. I folded the letter gently and placed it in my notebook, right beside my mother's quote. 2 reminders that honesty, no matter how much it costs, always comes full circle. Sometimes I think about the woman I was the day I got fired. Shaking, humiliated, desperate to be heard. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her this. They didn't fire you for being too honest. They fired you because your truth scared them. And someday, that same truth will build your throne. I lean back, watching the skyline shimmer against the night. The world is still full of liars, cheaters, and frauds, but it's also full of people like me. And maybe, just maybe, the next young woman who stands up for what's right won't have to fight as hard to be heard. 'Cause I already did. This was my story. The story of how honesty destroyed me, then made me unstoppable. Subscribe for more powerful real-life revenge and redemption stories.